Okay, welcome. Oh, did someone have a question?
Yeah, this is Carol. Somehow I've come in as a guest. Does that make any difference?
It does not make a difference to me, Carol.
I'm happy to be a guest at this meeting as long as I show up as being here.
You're here, friend.
Thank you. Gee, weird.
Hi, Julie. This is Lauren Emang. My phone, I don't know. I think it just called me caller one. I don't know why.
That's okay, Lauren. Thank you for identifying yourself so I know you're here.
Thanks. I'll mute myself.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we'll go ahead and start your October meeting. And you have an exciting, yes, we do see Carol's twice. One of hers, I'm going to go ahead. I didn't want to dismiss it in case it dismisses her other one. But yes, Carol, I see you twice for some reason, and I don't know why. Okay, I'll go ahead and share to go over your agenda and see if you have any public comment today. And then you have a really exciting agenda today. There's going to be a lot of engagement and a need for your feedback and questions. So I'm thrilled with what's going to happen at your meeting tonight. So just virtual housekeeping, please mute yourself when you join if you haven't already. There's a mic button that you can press. And for anyone who wants to do a public comment, please type your name in the chat and the general topic you'd like to comment on. And there will be an opportunity to do that after we go over the agenda. So your agenda tonight, public comment, roll call, and meeting minute approval. And then the bulk of your meeting is going to be both an educational portion and an opportunity for engagement with the H.O.P.E board. We have two fantastic guests here tonight, Allison Hobgood, the Executive Director of Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center, who you've met previously, and Janice Cook, the Executive Director of the soon-to-be Kepi-Naknak Resource Center in Monroe. It's formerly the South Benton Food Pantry. And they are going to be talking to you about their expansion plans and their growing and their progress and asking you some specific questions for your feedback. And then we'll have some brief community updates. So hold on just a second. Give me a sec. I want to make sure folks are coming in from the waiting room if they haven't been admitted already. Okay, apologies for the detour. And just for a reminder about the culture for your board that you all wanted to set, and for folks just tuning in, inclusivity and kindness and curiosity, respect and open-mindedness. So public comment, let me go ahead and stop sharing for a second and see if there are any folks who are here for a public comment. Giving one last opportunity. If you're interested in doing a public comment, please put your name in the chat. There's also a great feature in Teams where you can raise your hand if the chat isn't working for you. Nancy, your internet is having a tough time. I am sorry about that. Please text me if you need to go out or rejoin.
Sure.
Anyone call? Sorry, go ahead, Nance.
It's being fishy.
Okay, well, I can hear you just fine and see you too. Anybody who's called in on the phone who would like to make a public comment? Okay, I am seeing no one wanting to make a public comment. If you can note that, Paula. And we'll go ahead and dive in. I'd like to introduce you to a new board member, and I'll just screen share real quick. Her name is Alice Carter, and we're going to have her share just a little bit about her background and experience, the perspective that she brings to the board, and anything else she hopes to bring to the board. And I'll go ahead and stop presenting. And Alice, please introduce yourself and welcome to the board. Oh, Alice, you are muted for me. Hold on just a second. Go ahead and try to unmute yourself if you could. I know it worked before and you're off mute now. Technical difficulties for everybody tonight. Alice, I'm going to try muting you and then unmuting you again and see if that helps. You are unmuted, but I can't hear you. Can I recommend that you exit the meeting and come on back in? And that'll probably restore your audio issues. Sound okay? Okay. We can go ahead and do minutes approval because Alice would be abstaining from those anyway. So let's pull up, just so I get all of the names right. There was one correction in your minutes. I got one of the absent and excused board members incorrect. So I changed that in your minutes, but that was the only edit that I received from any board members. Are there any other edits that need to be made to your September minutes? I am hearing none. Admitting some folks from the lobby. Let's see how Alice's audio is. How about now, Alice? Well, and now her video is frozen, so the tech issues continue. Sorry, folks. Is there a motion from any of the board to approve your September meeting minutes?
So moved.
I'll move to. Somebody else got it.
Carol moves to approve. Charles, would you like to second?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Are you still seeing my screen with all of your names up there? Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you for confirming. I will go ahead and go through and please say that you are here and that you vote yay or nay for the minutes, or you're abstaining if you were not here last month. Catherine.
Here and approved.
Thank you. Carol.
Here and abstain.
And Alice, I know that you will be here and you can mark Alice as an abstention, Paula. She was not a board member last month. Ricardo has an excused absence. He is out of state right now with his family. Brian. I don't know if Brian has joined us yet. Let's mark him not here for right now, Paula, but he might join us when he can. Cade. I don't see Cade, so I'm going to assume they are still on leave, but I will check in with them and adjust the minutes accordingly. Anita.
Here and abstain.
Thank you. Joel.
Here and approved.
George.
Here and approved.
Ari. I don't see Ari here yet. Okay, mark him absent. Barbara.
Here and approved.
Melissa. Is Melissa here this evening? I do not see her
Hi,
yet.
Julie. She's not here. I was going to stand in for her today, but I will not vote, obviously.
Charissa, thank you very much for being here. I'm glad we'll have a IHN person in case there's any questions. So you can mark Melissa excused tonight, Paula, and I'll check in with her. Cindy.
Here and approve.
Charles.
Here and approve.
Peggy has an excused absence tonight. She had a conflict with work. Andrea. I don't see Andrea yet. Andrea is not here.
Bree?
Oh, Bria has texted me that she's having technical difficulties. She's trying to join, so I didn't want to mark her absent until she can get here, but we can put her as abstaining from the notes. Thank you, Carol. Jan.
Here and approve.
Chanel has a work engagement at OSU tonight, so she is excused. Nancy.
Here and
I think you said approved. All right. Paula, can you please confirm for me that thank you, Nancy, here and approve, that we have a quorum? I think we do, but let me just do a real quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. We have exactly a quorum. And if Bria joins, we'll have 51%. So your meeting can continue. Alice, I'm glad you joined the board when you did. How is your audio tonight? Is it working? No, we still can't hear you, Alice. I don't know what has happened. I'm so sorry. Well, next month, hopefully Alice's audio is working and we can introduce you then. Bria has just joined. Bria, is your audio okay today?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. All right, folks, we have a couple exciting people here today, so I'm going to go to your next slide. So this is not just education, but like I said, it's also to engage you as a fantastic cross section of our community with different perspectives and a lot of experience. Resource centers and access to services is one of your HOPE recommendations. So this really focuses on what resource centers do we have in Benton County? How are they changing to meet growing needs? How do these resources align with or implement HOPE recommendations? And so we've got two fabulous guests tonight, Allison and Janice, who are going to talk about the work that they are doing. So, Allison, are you ready to go?
Sure. I didn't even
And you
realize
know
I
what?
was first, but
I'm going, Allison, I'm
yeah,
going to stop presenting so that folks can see you when you introduce yourself, and then I'll share the screen to go through your slides. Does that sound good?
that sounds great to me. I'm one of those people on a very tiny computer, so I always appreciate the weight on the screen share because then I'm like, oh my gosh, there are faces and people. So, um, hey everyone, my name's Allison Hobgood, and like Julie said, I'm the executive director of the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center. We're also known as CDDC. I use she, her pronouns, and for folks who visual description helps for access, I am a white woman in my mid 40s. I've got spiky black hair, and I'm wearing a gray, I'm really dressed up in a gray hoodie. I just realized that's what I'm wearing. And I'm in a room with some paintings and in my house here in Corvallis. So thanks to everyone for the opportunity to hang here with you today and to share about what we're up to and some of our dreams and visions in terms of expansion and ways that we can increase and our supports for folks. I always like to tell folks at the beginning of meetings what an honor it is to be here as a representative of the Drop-In Center. It's an incredible organization, and I'm really lucky to be a part of it. And I'm lucky to be in collaboration with so many cool people who are here today. So thank you for taking time to chat with me. I'm also really jazzed that Janice is here. We were just chatting on the phone today and commiserating about, leaking buildings on top of our heads while we're trying to do the jobs that we do. And we're going to learn a ton from Janice, and I am so grateful for her work and just her spirit and presence. So I am not interested in hearing myself talk for too terribly long. So my goal is to talk for about 15 minutes at the most. And then, I think maybe Julie, do we want to just wait for a kind of mutual Q&A with Janice, or do we want to do that bit by bit, or to help me understand what's
I
best
think
for the group?
it would probably be helpful to do some Q&A just for the drop-in centers
Okay.
expanding plans. We have enough time, and then Janice can go and we can do specific Q&A for her.
Got
And there
it.
will still be time left over for questions for both of you once folks have seen what both of you are planning.
Okay, that sounds great. And yeah, so once, Julie has been gracious enough, she's going to share slides for me, but basically I'll just walk you through some of a little bit of background about the Drop-In Center in case you don't know. Sorry for those of you who this is old hat. And then talk a little bit about our needs and desires and one of the ways that we see going forward in terms of expansion into a navigation center in a sort of fuller sense, as that's described in legislative terms. And then I'd love to just talk with people and hear what you're thinking. Like, wow, that's a really terrible idea. Hey, that sounds pretty cool. We have a lot that's happening in a tiny space right now, and it was a really wild day at work. Apparently, I got a whole scoop on it from folks. So I would love your suggestions for the future. So Julie, if you feel good, maybe we'll switch over to the slideshow, and um, that'll be great. All right, that's us, Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center. The first few slides, and Julie, you can go on to the next one, are meant as both an invitation and a reminder that at the heart of what we do at the Drop-In Center are the folks that we serve. It's really important to me and to CDDC that even as we're working on so-called projects or building buildings or expanding services, that we're always keeping foremost in our hearts and minds, the people who we're trying to hold space for, who we're trying to lift up and partner and collaborate with. So in that spirit, I wanted to share some wisdom from some guests who were willing to participate in an event in summer of 2021 when we worked with a peace activist called John Knowltner to amplify the voices of unhoused folks in our community. And so this first slide is of a side profile of a smiling Black man, and he says the following: people need to be more human. There are wolves out here. If you see someone struggle, help them out. It could be you. Next slide, please, Julie. Here we have a woman with long hair swept to the side, peering beautifully out at the camera, and she says, when people are tired and worn down, it's hard to move on and see the next steps. And the next slide, thank you. This one is of a person covering their face, kind of coyly, shyly, and smiling at the same time. And he says, I'm changing my life. I'm starting to love myself again. And so again, this is just to sort of set up the people who are at the heart of all the work that that we're doing and that many of you in the room are doing. I also know there are a lot of folks on the H.O.P.E board who have lived experience with homelessness and poverty, and your wisdom and experience is really important, as is those of the guests that we're serving right now in shaping anything that we do going forward in the future. So a little bit of a reminder about the drop-in. Our motto is where needs are met, and we've got 3 primary mission-driven goals that enable us to help between 40 and 70 diverse people every day, Monday through Friday, which means that we see upwards of about 750 or 800 unduplicated folks over the course of a year. We are a community center and gathering space where people in poverty who often are really actively marginalized or stigmatized can receive social support and be recognized in their full humanity. We want to love people in their full selves as best that we can. We strive to offer every single person who uses our services, regardless of their mental health disabilities or substance use, we try to offer them the human dignity that everybody deserves. Second, we support people's basic welfare by providing things like food, clothing, hygiene supplies, and weather-specific supports around warming and cooling and staying dry. We're also a PO box for over 600 people who use the drop-in center as their address. And that's sort of historically and in our database. Not every single person is getting mail every day at 600 people a day. Third, we are also a healing-centered low-barrier resource and navigation hub, and we meet lots of other needs for individuals across a wide spectrum of day services, and I'm going to say more about those in a minute. And I apologize to some of you who were here and heard me talk for about 5 minutes around housing supports and when Sean and Andrea were here, because a couple of these slides are similar, but I thought that some of this context would be useful. So at the heart of the Drop-In Center is social justice work. We aim for true human dignity for everyone, regardless of their past or current situation, as I just explained. We also want to empower people, the guests at the center, people we see during outreach, the people who work with us, who volunteer for us, both at the center proper and out in SORT. We're really invested in transformative justice, and this means that there's a framework for thinking and being an approach at the heart of our work that's about responding to violence, harm, and human abuse without creating more of that, even as we think that we're doing good. And we're not perfect, but what we try. We embrace and practice a trauma-informed approach and healing-centered engagement, which means that we come to each interaction as we can with in a way that lessens or prevents further traumatization of really vulnerable people. And this slide and the one that follows, I just put in to help give you a sense of kind of our vibe. On this one, we've got a couple pictures of news that's up on bulletin boards and in our windows, a volunteer and a guest who are putting up our little library that's now in the front of our building, a picture of our front window down in 530 Southwest 4th Street. Next slide, Julie. Here is a melange of pictures. We've got someone getting a haircut. We've got some of our staff and volunteers by our hand washing station. People being served at the walk-up window. That was a little bit more explicit a picture from COVID times. And then
Hold on
three,
just a second, Allison. I'm
sure.
sorry. I think Allison finally
You're
got
cool.
Alice
think-
finally got audio.
I think it says
Can you hear me?
We sure can, friend. Success. Okay, if you can go ahead and mute yourself now. Allison's right in the middle of hers.
Okay.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, take it away, Allison.
Yeah, and no worries, Alice. Take your time. I'll try not to make it echoey as you're figuring that out. Okay. And then just the other three pictures are from our various times in our Art Tuesday program. People are painting pots and doing art and making tie-dyes and generally hanging out. Okay, next slide, Julie. I wanted to remind folks about the impact of interlocking systems of oppression on the folks that we serve. Our data at the drop-in center show that, unsurprisingly, sadly, homeless, Indigenous, and Black individuals are exceptionally overrepresented in our community. A significant number of our guests identify as LGBTQ plus people, so lots of queer and trans folks. 76% of the drop-in center guests identify as having disabilities. Racial and ethnically, and here's some actual sort of really hard data numbers in comparison to the Benton County Census in 2020. If the census data showed that 0.9% of folks in the county are Indian or Alaskan Native, at the center we see 13.2% of our population. So you can really see the kind of staggering disproportionate numbers there. If Black or African American folks make up roughly 1% of the folks in Benton County, that's closer to 8% of folks who are using the drop-in center. Latinx folks are about 8.7% of the folks we serve, and 15.4% of the people that we serve identify as multiracial. Next slide, please, Julie. A quick recap of the kinds of resource and wellness supports that we offer at the drop-in. We have mental health counseling, walk-up, super low barrier. We've got physical health support like wound care and HIV testing and OHP enrollment. And of course, all these things are happening in conjunction with a lot of incredible partners who I'll say more about in a second in this presentation. We help people access their medical prescriptions. We can help with lost identification or certificates. We have an employment launching program. People are charging their phones and using technology and making sure that their tech is booted up. We help support people's pets, many of whom are service animals or ESAs. We can help with transportation to loved ones and appointments. We have a street outreach team that goes directly out into the community, into encampments and on the streets 2 days a week on Wednesday and Friday mornings. And of course, we are a navigational hub that refers a lot of people to other great social service organizations who are doing wonderful things and can do those things better than we can do those things. Next slide, please, Julie. So this is just a quick data snapshot of what we were up to between July and September of this year. And we connected with about 135 unduplicated folks during street outreach. An additional 400 plus unduplicated folks were at the drop-in center. That made for, at the center specific, almost 3,000 visits by people. We gave food to people almost 2,700 times. People received their mail 456 times, had basic needs met 776 times. And again, that's tech charging, use of the house phone, obtaining clothing, getting hygiene supplies. Our needs navigators especially and other staff were able to help 81 people obtain identification of some kind. 55 people get help with transportation. Often people need to get to other cities for appointments or to meet with probation officers or lawyers, or there's all kinds of reasons, or they need to go back to be with their loved ones in another place and who are their primary support network. We helped 35 people over the course of those few months get their medications that they need. And then wonderfully, we connected people directly 245 times with other partner agencies. Next slide, please, Julie. And I think really when we're talking about the future of the drop-in center and what navigation centers can do, that number of like, hey, we know these other providers and we can hook you up directly. Also, maybe we can do that with those people at the center all together in one stop that really feels not traumatic and warm and caring and trustworthy. And so this particular data snap I thought was important. We in collaboration with the service providers that we work with from other agencies, at the center proper, we were able to offer direct wellness supports almost 200 times. And so that meant that people were working with caseworkers from other agencies around housing, with our own in-house basic needs navigators, meeting with counselors. We have both volunteer and paid folks who help us with mental health, county health navigators, or Samaritan care coordinators to get the direct supports and next steps that they needed. So that's the kind of the one-stop shop model that is a part of navigation centers as they've been defined by House Bill 2006. The goal of the navigation center, which is an augmented version of what we've got going at the drop-in, would be obviously to increase and maximize intervention impact. A quick reminder too that a project like this would help to address HOPE recommendations 1, 3, 6, and 7, which are around coordinated data improvement efforts, kind of hub models of care coordination, like literally getting service providers in a room together to be able to do case conferencing and things like that. Along with that, number 7, right, the creation of a resource center in the way that that's defined in the HOPE recommendations. And then a component piece, which I'll say more about in a second, of respite shelter that would allow us to tackle number 4, 24/7, 365 augmentation of emergency shelter systems. Next slide. Thank you. The components that make up a navigation center, key components, continue to have a drop-in center for day respite and social services. So people always need to be able to come to some place that they trust, see people that they trust, and just have a cup of coffee if they want, or pursue other things that they need to pursue. Low barrier emergency respite and non-congregate sleeping spaces. Navigation centers typically have some component to them like this. It depends on the size of the population in need. We had been thinking around something like 6 to 10 respite rooms for seniors, people with disabilities, veterans, queer people, and trans people, and BIPOC community members. And those are different from conventional shelter sort of sleeping arrangements in that they are separate units, non-congregate. Often couples can stay there. People can bring their animals. You're able to bring your things. And you don't have to leave. Many shelters, they're not 365. And so there's also a little bit more transience around coming in and out. So this is a bit of a different model when it comes to shelter. A third component in a navigation center is, amplified, more comprehensive basic needs navigation, especially for folks who are residing there. Though those are things that people who are getting services there as well, just day to day, could access. But here specifically around mental and physical health services. So like med stabilization and, what other kinds of, direct physical supports that people might need if they're experiencing mobility impairment or what have you. And then fourth, access to co-located agencies and providers, like I was talking about a minute ago, a one-stop shop for the center guests as well as folks who want to just drop in per the drop-in center model. Next slide, please. And actually, I'm going to come back in a minute to a story I was going to tell you, but it'll work in a second. I wanted to just say a little bit more kind of about, actually, Julie, go back one more slide to the earlier slide, if you don't mind. The other thing I just wanted to say is that I'm excited about this project because I think we have a proven model that's working and we're able to build it out according to models that also already exist around the state, but make it our own. And really, well, maybe I will just tell the story right now. One of the things, and this will come up a little bit later too, that we're trying to do better at the center, and I think that a navigation center like this would allow for, is to really catch people and stabilize them more fully and with a more robust safety net. So the co-located service providers, a room of your own, a way to just take a break for long enough to get yourself on ramped, like that can all happen at a navigation center. And there are a couple examples that I'll offer about what this might look like. Earlier this month, we had a young person come by the center with their personal support worker, who was their only emergency contact. They had been staying at an Oxford house. They had relapsed. They were not allowed to stay there, and they came to the center asking for shelter supplies and wanted to know how to put up a tent and live outside. And we were able to sit down together, have a conversation about how that was really not a great plan. This young person also had some complex mental health needs, was a person who experiences autism, and the plan to go sleep on the street was really not a great one. So we were in conjunction with our partners, able to get that person stabilized via a hotel program, hooked up with Anita Earl's team at Samaritan, get this person to the surgery that they needed to have, and then into a respite room where they're recovering now. And that's a great story. Those are the kinds of things that we want to have happen all the time. And I think taking the model that we have, but including low barrier emergency respite sleeping spaces, will also allow for us to just sort of say, here, be here. You have just shown back up from the state mental hospital. You are stable. You are on your meds. It would be really a travesty to have to go back and sleep on the street right now. How can we buy you some time in order to get yourself sort of in a more stable position? All right, next. So community partnerships. We are so grateful to all the folks that we work with. Top of this list, of course, and as we've been planning this project, are the Drop-In Center guests. They offer each other peer-to-peer supports. There are a lot of grassroots visionary people who are part of our community, and through one-to-ones and some community forums that I've had with people, it's been really cool to hear about whether people want something like an amplified navigation center. When what if we dreamt big, what would the Drop-In Center look like in the near term? And so all of the work that I'm offering here and that I'm kind of putting forward more generally in the community starts with conversations with those folks about what do you need, because you know best what you need, and it doesn't make any sense to make a shiny building that nobody wants to be in. So anyway, kudos to our guests, and I appreciate them deeply as a primary community partner. Other folks, as you see here, these are folks that we work with already on site at the Drop-In Center, and folks that have said that in an expanded center, they would love to be a part of being there day to day, or as they could over the course of the week by loaning staff or what have you. So Benton County's harm reduction team, Samaritan Health presence. Always shout out to Corvallis Housing First and Unity, who are incredible partners for us around housing supports. County Health Navigators, CSC, who do all kinds of wonderful things, coordinated entry support, veteran support, employment. DHS, we're in a lot of conversation about how to get them more explicitly plugged in at a navigation center, doing food security and employment supports. Always our partners in the community who are doing mental health. We lean on them a ton, folks like the Assertive Community Team. And then the COG, there's discussion around disability and senior services and eligibility to get people mapped into those services a little bit more expeditiously. All right. So another collaborator that I want to give a lot of love to is a group called CETA. And CETA is a woman-owned architecture and engineering design firm out of Portland who has worked on a lot of projects, nonprofit projects similar to ours. They were willing to meet with me to hear about what we were interested in, and then have offered some pro bono support to help us really try and launch this thing into some next steps. So I don't have right now any design plans. They're in the works, and I think I'm supposed to get a hold of those by the end of the week based on some of what our conversation was recently with the CETA team. but they are really wonderful. And I am so deeply grateful that they have said, we believe in this and would like to just help you in any way that we can. And then we'll figure out as it moves forward how you can pay us later or whatever. So um, I put a website link here to them so that if anybody, later would want to check that out, the good work that they've done. Um, Next slide, Julie. This is an example of a similar-ish project that they did in Washington County, Oregon. It's called the Union Gospel Mission Women's Life Change Center, and it's huge. It's like 50,000 square foot, and it's a 3-story building. But conceptually, when I met with them, they were like, "Oh yeah, right, like a place where there are places for people to stay and social services they can get, and also a place to be and be warm and be seen and be valued." So I just wanted to offer this as a kind of visual to give you a sense of their work elsewhere. And then this last slide, thank you for the next one, Julie, is also just more of a point of reference. I don't have um, a budget specific to this project yet. In large part too, I wanted to have a conversation with folks in this room, but there, as I mentioned, there are other navigation centers that have been or are being stood up around the state. And here's an example of one that was specific to the needs in the Dalles. This was, at least at its start, a $5.8 million, 14,000 square foot building plus 18 micro shelters, which is the way that they're doing their sheltering piece. And you can see that here it's a combo of all different kinds of funders and players who stepped up to offer capital specifically. All right, that was way enough for me. So, in fact, I think that was more like 20 minutes. So, thank you for humoring me. Here is this last slide is points of contact, my email and my work phone. I can also give you my cell phone if you want it. We've got a direct number for supports and resources, which is the drop-in center number if anyone on this call needs supports, and also our website. So, questions, thoughts?
Allison, can I add one more detail that I think the Hope Board should know?
Sure.
United Way's Director of Community Impact, Chris Sherrod, has been convening all of the partners that Allison listed on that slide for the past year and a half. So CSC, the COG, Samaritan, DHS, United Way, Allison, other community partners saying, how do we share space? How do we make it so that a client doesn't have to go to Research Way and Albany and downtown and 9th Street and all these other places to get their needs met? And all those various leaders of our community partners came to the conclusion that they would like to be supportive of the daytime drop-in center being the lead on this concept, and that they'd like to have their staff on site. They'd like to contribute in some way to the ongoing sustaining of this concept. So this isn't something that the daytime drop-in center came up with in a vacuum. It really was a year and a half long community effort with the leaders in the nonprofit and government public benefits sector, culminating in wanting to support this and championing the daytime drop-in center, and really thanking you, Allison, for stepping forward to say we will take this on, because all the other community partners wanted it to happen. So wanted to add that in.
Look, I have a question.
Thank you, Julie. Yes.
Actually, I have a short question and a long question.
Okay, Carol.
Okay, so the short question is, how are the neighbors handling just the overall work of the, people coming and going? Has that relationship improved since 5 years ago?
I would say absolutely yes. We have really, really great neighbors. I try and be in as much communication with them as we can be. My staff checks in with them on a pretty regular basis, and that means like folks who are supporting the food trucks, folks who are in the Smith Glass building. When I came on, one of the first things I did was to connect with Brian Smith and just sort of say, hey, I'm new here, and here's what we're working on. It was also an interesting moment because of COVID. And so a lot of our services were actually pivoting to outside. So there's been a way that there's even more visibility, but that hasn't seemed to have been an issue. And when things come up in the neighborhood, people bring it to us. We talk about it. We work on it together. And actually, one of the latest things that is really cool. So Christina Jansella owns some properties that are right across the street,
Mhm.
and we are going to rent a couple of spaces for social service annex room right
Cool.
across the street. So when we're exploding at the seams, it's like you can go over there too. So I continue to be really optimistic. That's a really important question.
Great. So the longer question, and as with Gaul, is divided into three parts, as Caesar said. One of them is, are you talking about where you're located now expanding, or do you have a new place? Two, you mentioned the number of people you served, but then you're talking about a relatively small number of beds, like 8 beds or something like that. So that seemed like an anomaly. And three, if we as a community are going to work to make this happen, which would be all of us, why not go bigger? I mean, that feels to me like this is kind of a one-shot time. And I know from fundraising in my other life that it's better to go bigger and get the ultimate of what you want versus getting something and then 2 years trying to upgrade it in 5 years. So
Yeah,
however you choose to answer those questions, I'm interested in your answers.
totally. Awesome questions. And thank you for, in a multi-part question, enumerating clearly all the multi-parts.
That's good.
So, I'm just actually having flashbacks to, like, academic conferences where someone's like, I have a question. You're like, oh no, how am I going to get all this down? And then it's usually not even a question. You're like, okay,
Yep,
let me
I'm with you.
This is a great series of questions. I think the question of where is still up in the air. There are a lot of reasons, and in surveying the folks that we work with too, that where we are, I think makes a ton of sense. It's a known quantity. We've got great neighbors. Potentially there's expansion possibility on that site. How that said, it's not like it must be here. I mean, I really, really want to work with all the folks, as you pointed out, who need to be in on this. And if it ends up that there's a different location that makes a lot more sense, but is still healing centered and trauma informed and just as a fundamental location, right? And is easy to get to, it's on a bus line, people can make their way there in ways that feel really safe, then I think that's okay too. One of the things that the CETA team said that they can help with would be working through site identification. And in my conversations with both folks at the city and the county, also, it's been like, hey, have you thought about this place? What about this place? And I think that's all kind of to be seen. But so part one, number of beds. This is a great question too. And I think it's actually related to the second part of your question, which is like, why not go super big? And think the really short answer that I currently have is I don't want to create, I wouldn't want to create something that feels corporate, governmental, or scary for the folks that we're serving. And I think there's a way to have maybe a larger footprint that still doesn't do that. But in our initial conversations, and this is why I'm here too, is kind of like, well, what about a 12,000 square foot space instead of 2,500 square feet, which is what we're in right now? What about 10 non-congregate respite rooms, which does give us some room to move, but doesn't also divert the fundamental mission of the drop-in center as a nonprofit organization into shelter fundamentally, even though that'll be an important component part of a navigation center too. I also was just kind of ballparking around like what folks, because I've had a lot of conversations with folks who are standing up centers in other places are doing. And Lane County, for example, that facility is 18,000 square feet. And I think that they have 70 beds. And I should have checked all that before. This is on like some permanent public record, so I reserve
It's
the
right
right to
around
go.
75. It's right around
That's right.
75.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. And so I was also, as we've been playing with this, it was just kind of like scalability. I mean, Lane, there is a much, much larger population of unhoused people. What do we need in Benton that would just be a sweet spot? But I think it's a really legit question. And I think it is about sort of a sweet spot, like a thing that isn't too big and too scary. And we lose track of what's really important, which is bringing people together in healing centered ways. And then also, and giving them somewhere to stay, to be able to figure out next steps, and they don't have to do that, in a tent. And then also, yeah, not doing a thing that you suggested, which is, let's
Although the
underballpark, underfund.
a good architect can make space really attractive. It doesn't have to be corporate.
Absolutely.
And given,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of something like Oregon Community Foundation as a potential funder. And I've done a lot of grant reviews for them, so I kind of know how they go. And the question would be, really? Step it up here,
Yeah, and in terms of folks that are also peripherally involved and that I'm excited about too. So OCF, I just had a conversation with them, with John a couple of days ago. I'm going to circle back with Dan Rayfield. Senator Merkley's team found us and we're like, what's this all about? And I was like, I don't know. What are you all doing? And so I think it is going to be, and this is on the table too, like, in terms of funding streams and amounts, what's coming from meta legislation, what would be coming from private donors, what's coming from foundations like OCF. And OCF has been an incredibly great supporter of the drop-in. That's how I got a job. So thank you.
Allison,
Thank you,
there's a couple of things in the chat, and I want to make sure we have time for
okay,
other questions too.
sure. And I see George's hand also.
Yes, we'll go to George's question. In the chat, for folks who can't see it, Anita Earl has said, we're truly appreciative and celebrate the CDDC's role in our community. Thank you, Anita. And Anna from Jackson Street Youth has said, thank you, Allison. Great answers and information. George, next question from you. Oh, George, you are muted. If you can unmute yourself and start again.
Or not.
I don't have a question so much as a comment. So if there are other people that have comments, I'd rather have them get their questions in before I speak.
Thank you, George. Do we have other questions from board members?
I also want to make sure, Julie, that we don't run into Janice's time at all, because this is such an important thing to hear about too.
And in the chat, Charissa is saying IHN CCO is grateful and excited about partnerships with you and looking forward to the Navigation Center for folks who can't see the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions.
Julie, can I just say one quick thing? So Anita and Anna and Charissa thank you for all of that and for your kindness, and thank you all for also being huge champions. We can't do any of the things that we do without working with you all. So that means a ton. Sometimes I call Anita, I'm like, help, Anita, we need respite. And then magical things happen. So it's great.
I'm not seeing any other questions from board members. So yeah, George, go for it.
No, thank you. Allison, thank you for coming. And I think it's really important that we understand that while we all recognize the need for this service and what we're doing, I think we really need to think, we don't think about it often enough to say, shelter isn't enough. Just having a place to be is a place to start, but it takes way more than just having a place to put your head at night. It takes support in order to get people to reintroduce to society, because that's what we're really trying to do here, is take people who have essentially been put to the curb by society and reintroduce them to a community that points the finger at them and blames them as individuals for their own trauma. And we re-trauma by the discussions that we have as a community about how do we site these places, how do we do these things. We continually re-traumatize people, and we have to be able, part of our job and part of what Allison is really good at is explaining to people, to help them understand there's more on the path to life and being sufficient and being able to function in society than just getting a job and getting a paycheck. You have to learn how to do those things, and the system is hugely confusing and complicated, and it takes literally leading people by the hand to show them how to do it. And that's what this service does. It takes people by the hand, people who are willing to take the step, and brave enough and courageous enough to take the step to do it. And so this is an amazing thing, and it is truly worth our time and our support, and particularly to be able to help the community. And Carol, you're probably as good as this as anybody, is helping people understand that this is about people. It's not just about simple political solutions about getting a job and giving a place to live and people take care of themselves. We have to show people how to do this, and we have to provide the supports to make them successful, because we've all benefited from these kind of things. We've been fortunate enough to benefit from them. So I appreciate what you're doing, Allison. I've taken my time, and thank you. Thank you for being here.
George, thank you. I feel weepy. I really, that was really compassionate and real. And thank you for saying that.
Spoken like a
Do
true
we have
librarian.
do we have any other board members with a question or an idea for Allison? Okay, well, Allison, we're going to move on to Janice. And if people think of other questions for either or both of you, we'll have another chance for questions after Janice shares. And Janice, I'll have you introduce yourself before I start screen sharing so everybody can see you.
Okay, thanks
Hi.
again, everyone. Janice, take it away. So glad you're here.
Hey, I don't know if I can do half as well as you did, Allison. It's tremendous what you're doing out there, and I'm just really appreciative of all your work too. And I just thank you for the opportunity here, Julie, to be able to, in my corner of the world, it seems so much smaller than what's going on over there, but we are still part of Benton County here. And I do want to make that clear that Monroe here is part of Benton County. And that's something that I struggle with and have struggled with throughout time, to have my voice, our voice, be heard with the needs down here. Maybe not nearly as great as what Allison sees, but it is down here. I am the current program manager for South Benton Food Pantry. We are just a hub here that has formed over the last few years of not just a food security place, but a secure place for people to come and be safe and tell me what's going on, tell my volunteers, what's going on. And, I really appreciate your time tonight. And I hope that I am able to proceed with an idea here that will give you guys some outlook at what we're doing here or in Benton County, in Monroe, in that area. So we'll get started.
Okay, I'll go ahead and screen share. Janice, give me just 1 second. Okay, take it away.
And I don't have nearly as many slides or anything like what Allison did, so it's probably going to be way more simple. And anyway, I really wanted to just say thank you again. And South Benton Food Pantry has embarked on a journey that started a few years ago. The Monroe United Methodist Church congregation approached me a few years ago. Many may not know this, but the congregation itself is quite small now. And they approached me to ask me, what would you do with this property if we were to sell it to you? And so I have had many sleepless nights. I've had many wake up with lots of mornings, and I have put together a plan to them. I think I probably spent a month or so before I actually came to a Sunday morning service and said, hey, these are my ideas, and what do you think? And it basically started, they started the food pantry in the 1990s, and they started feeding people. Thank you. You read my mind. And as you can tell, it was very humble beginnings. The lady on the right in the back that has short gray hair, I believe she was the pastor at the time, the Reverend, I don't really remember her name. I think it was Carol Thompson. She started the food pantry in the 1990s out of a desperate need for feeding families after the Welfare Reform Act of 1997 was implemented. They saw that the demand for emergency food was really great in this area and continues. If you want to look at statistics today, but many who qualified for the food stamp program at that time were unable to buy sufficient food for their families, and so they moved the food pantry from her home into the garage where the food pantry is currently housed, and later on you'll see what a big difference there is in the food. And then so I want to say that right now we are doing a lot of different things out of this building that we will continue to do as we move into, as we transition. We are closing on this building on the 31st. We had some hiccups and time navigation was not on our side on some things, but we will be owning the building on 31st is when we sign the agreement. But moving forward, we still use this building for many different things. We have the church still meets. Their building is being used at times for events. Strengthening Rural Families also provides parenting classes, and they provide a dental van that comes, and more recently it'll be coming every other month, but at times it was only coming once a quarter. Lori Bechtold is a board member who runs the Art in the Park program in the summer, which is a 5-week Monday through Thursday summer art class, and they do all kinds of activities, and then they provide some not just provide, they provide art activities, but they also provide food for the kids. So it's a collaboration with the school and with the food pantry to provide weekend food for the kids during the summer. And then there's also AA meetings that still are meeting here and will continue. We have collaborations with Oregon State University's extension programs with nutrition classes and tasting tables, and we've had them come out and cook kale and make kale chips for us, just to give an idea of what kind of tasting tables we did, and then give out to the clients that would be coming through our food pantry. We also have been working with Benton County Health Department and also Health Services, the CHC, in providing a family navigator to help with our Amigos de Monroe meeting, which is our Latinx group that meets. They also provided OHP signups and would meet with people to get them started with primary care here in Monroe. Samaritan Health Services also provides nutrition classes, and they also have a Living Well with Chronic Conditions class. I eventually got trained to teach that class, so I do that class on a regular basis as a volunteer. We have our South Benton County Gleaners program, which is another food distribution for low-income families. And that is a totally volunteer-run program where they rescue food from different places like Kentucky Fried Chicken, Trader Joe's, First Alternative, things like that. We also provide for the membership, it's a membership income qualified group. We provide articles, household articles from Target and things like that. We also have worked with the Department of Human Services Youth Parole and Probation Program, Benton County Probation and Program, with their having a probation officer come and meet with their clients here and to be safe and secure. And as we move forward, well, go back one more time. I just want to mention, as we move forward, we are going to do some more collaborations with other entities. Our next entity is going to be CARDVA, is going to have a 1 day a week that they will be down here to help do interviews and give a safe place for members of the society that are experiencing rape or domestic violence and other things in their home. And then we can move forward and give a little statistics here. So this is from the 2021. This is all just about our food and the clients that we serve. And as you can see, we have over the last year, we've seen over 1,400 families through our food pantry. We've served close to 5,000 people, individuals. We count those up, and there you can see on the screen that there's a variation for 2021, but that's during COVID, as you can keep in mind. And during that amount of time, we had enough volunteers. We had at least on the average of about 21 volunteers a month that were able to put in almost 55 hours a month, just helping me serve the community. And that includes not only giving food, but it's listening, it's being a safe place for them to meet and gather. During COVID, we were preparing boxes, but I also did a kind of a farmer's market style food distribution of the groceries that you see, like the fresh produce and things like that. So people could come and pick what they needed and use what they needed. We implemented a homebound senior program senior and disabled program during COVID that allowed for meals to be brought into their home. We had a couple of caterers that gave us some good deals to give boxed food to them, and then also once a month provide a shopping list so they could pick out what they needed. And we had an amazing amount of volunteers be able to deliver meals and food boxes to around 67 families, senior and disabled homebound families during COVID, and that's been amazing for us. And so in the process of giving all of this information here, we also wanted to, as the congregation wanted to give us access to this building, we also worked with other agencies to identify the needs of this community through the community health assessment of Benton County and through the community health improvement plan. And so we were able to identify some of the things that would be helpful in this area. As you can see on the slide, there is the soup kitchen idea, having a thrift store, something like what Vinamoses does, and having free household items and clothing. Upgrade our space to be more inclusive for and open. It doesn't necessarily have to be for weddings or baptisms or anything like that, but just have a space for people to use. What is included in this property too is currently it's a rental. It's a 4-bedroom rental. It does need some work and would not put these people out on the street without talking to them first, obviously. But eventually, one of the things that the community has thought about doing is having either a preschool or a daycare or even a Head Start. And this building is right on the path, or right next to the path that is safe for kids to walk to the Monroe Grade School. So it would be a really great location to put a Head Start. Currently, Head Start is in Harrisburg, and if people know in relationship to where Monroe and Harrisburg are, that's quite a distance for our little ones to travel to go to Head Start, and that's what Monroe kiddos do. I know that my kids did when they were younger, and I would have to drive into town, meet here in Monroe, and then they would take the bus and go to Harrisburg, and then I would have to drive back in to town, pick them up, and go back home. And so it's a lot for a lot of our little ones to have to do that. And if you think about any of the disparities that might be going on educationally there, and it's just tremendous to think that, you know, it would be much more healthy for our populations to have access to that here. So that's a real long-term thought, but we'll see what happens. Of course, we have 27% of the people that are in the Monroe grade school are of Spanish or Mexican descent, and then we have a few that are of I think there's 2% that are Asian descent and speak only. One is Chinese and one is Japanese in their home. And so the little ones that are in school right now, they've requested to have, their parents have requested to have ESL classes. I used to teach ESL classes at the high school a few years ago, so I'm geared up to do that at some point. Would need a partner for that. Strengthening Rural Families provides financial wellness classes, and we're gearing up to do that in the spring. We also have talked about using our space for exercise and health classes like yoga, things like that. Along with the ESL classes, there has been a great need for immigration classes to be down here. And as many of you may know, that's really a difficult area to get to, because most of those classes happen in Salem or Portland. And it would be really nice to have some form of that here, where there are so many in this area that could just benefit from that, from in the Lane and Lynn and Benton County area. Another great thing that is going to happen is that we are going to be working with CSC to have people come and be here, hopefully on a regular basis, to help with utility assistance and other employment agency things like that, to be able to have that here as a one-stop shop. If we move on to the next one. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that a lot of this stuff is already happening. We are a one-stop shop. I can't tell you the number of times in a week I get asked, well, do you know of any jobs? And I'll have to come into the office and say, yeah, I do. I got these jobs that are available. Well, I don't know how to do a resume. I need one of those. And so it would be really helpful to have some employment skills here in the area. Many of the families I serve have many transportation barriers. And so that is one of the biggest things in this area that we see is there's either one car families or no car families, and people are doing the best they can to get, if they are working, doing the best they can to get to work. And so if we have a place where we can bring all the services together, which is my hope, then we can be able to help manage those barriers that are keeping people from being successful in the ways they want to be successful. And yep, we are wanting to meet families where we're at. You know, I pick up food from Corvallis Farmers Market for gleaners. And as you can see in this picture here, many families don't get to see this kind of food here because there are no grocery chains here. We have a Dairy Mart and a Dollar General. And Dairy Mart does its best to provide fresh produce, but it's not nearly like what you would get at Safeway or Winco or First Alternative. So we are constantly trying to find access to great nutritious food, not just the canned stuff. And so the other part that I wanted to really reiterate, that is many people come here because they feel safe. They well, not many people know that I'm working with the Benton County Harm Reduction Team, but I just wanted to put out there that they are kind of a silent partner right now, because I'm trying to provide needs for the people that need different supplies around here. As you know, opioid addiction is really relevant, and it is real, and it is just as dangerous in rural Oregon as it is in urban Oregon. So, and it's, that's something I would like to make known, that we are working with them. And again, that just speaks to our safe haven for every place. Then, so I would like to introduce the H.O.P.E NACNAC Resource Center. And I wanted to just briefly give you an overview. We are going to have a open house on November 16th at 6:30 here, introducing the H.O.P.E NACNAC Resource Center. And it's going to be open to the community. We'll have some local funders here, and also people that are interested in providing services that are welcome to come and be here. I wanted to give you a little history on where the name came from, if you don't mind.
Do you want me to stop screen sharing, Janice? Yeah, let me go ahead so you can see everybody. And I was going to ask, can you please tell people how you came up with this name? Because it is so culturally significant and thoughtful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so it was at the behest of a few board members that are also, they're church-going members too. And so it was really ideal for them to come up with this, to give me an idea where to go. Because I wanted something for this building to be known as, but also not just known as new, but also as roots really bound in this community. And one of the board members said, "Hey, how about we look at some indigenous names?" And so I got my my Google out, and I talked to a couple of people that I knew, and they said, "Well, hey, why don't you get a hold of Dr. Lewis?" And so I looked up his email and emailed him. He's actually an assistant professor at OSU who teaches anthropology and I believe ethnic studies. And I said, "Hey, I'm running a food pantry down here, buying the property. We would like to have some, if there is some language that you knew of around family or resource." And he wrote back to me the very same day and said, "Well, we don't have anything that's in the Kalapuyan language that is around resource and community, but here's what I do have." And so he, and I didn't know this at the time, but he is also a member of the Grand Ronde tribe, and I believe of the Kalapuyan nation. But he did say that there's several different bands in the area, and some of the bands that lived in this area of the Kalapuyan Indians, because the Kalapuyan tribe goes from Yamhill County all the way down to north of Roseburg, I believe. So the bands of tribes, there's different ones. There's the Long Tom Kalapuyans there, and the first name that he described was the Beaver people, and the second names he called were the Duck people. So the Beaver people were known as the Kepi Amimi, and the Duck people are called Naknak Amimi. And being that Monroe is equidistant between the two areas, and this is where their land was formerly from, I decided to bring to the board the H.O.P.E NACNAC Resource Center. So I also contacted the Grand Ronde tribe themselves to see if this was appropriate and okay. And they said, we are just really thrilled to know that people are thinking about indigenous names, and yes. And so I'm happy to say that we are going to name this, instead of South Benton Resource Center, it is the H.O.P.E NACNAC Resource Center. And that's what I have. So I will take questions, thoughts, anything you have to throw at me.
Janice, you sweet, thoughtful soul. I'm just so glad we have you in Benton County. Questions from the Hope Board, or Janice, do you have any specific questions that you'd like any feedback from the Hope Board? I know we talked about that too. Like, do you have any needs for collaboration or
Oh,
connections
gosh.
that you wanted to pitch to the board too?
So I didn't really speak to the needs of the food pantry itself, and I didn't really speak to what's going to happen here really soon. And maybe I should just briefly. The church has been so supportive to the point that here in December, they're going to convert our kitchen into a commercial kitchen on their dime. I am blown away by that. I did have to come up with the flooring, which I got a good deal on, and I got the funding for. Directly after our community meeting, the kitchen's going to be totally gutted. The dining room's going to be gutted, and we're going to convert it into a commercial kitchen and open space for the needs of the community, because one of the biggest needs that we do have is feeding our unhoused, our seniors, our disabled, and that might look like maybe 1 or 2 meals during the week. It might look like a meal every day. We don't know yet, but they're so passionate about helping this along that they're funding that. The other part of it is I live in the wintertime in a garage that needs a lot of help. And I do have a generous donor that donated the down payment towards the rebuild of our food pantry, but I am still needing $200,000 towards that rebuild. And I live in rain that comes in under the walls and through the roof. And it's if you really stepped a day in our shoes down here during the winter, you would say, how do you do this? And we do it because we love our community, we love our families, we love to help. And those are the two things I can really touch on as far as that goes. But overall, I really would like to have services available in this building so that we can get the help that we need to our clients and expand that in whatever capacity that looks like. I'm in the baby steps of everything here, but I'm willing to go all in. I don't have near the CDDC outfit going on, but I can tell you what, my heart's there. The heart of my board is there, and the heart of this community is really wanting that too.
So it sounds like ideas that any board members have about possible funding streams or partnerships or collaboration that they should either voice them here or email you. But there's a couple folks who have specific questions for you, Janice. So I saw Catherine's hand first and then Alice. So Catherine, go for it.
So I don't have questions as much as I just want to make a comment. I had the privilege of working with Monroe in a time several years back that there was a lot of challenges in trying to stabilize their food program and their senior meals program and their gleaning program. Through my work at the local gleaners here, Janice and I got to know one another in that space. And there are not enough words to convey the heart and passion and the commitment that has occurred through Janice's work in this community. Can't say enough. So I'm excited. This was a long ago conversation, whether this might happen. And we're literally seeing the manifestation of it through all of her work and coordination. Monroe, you have bridged the gap for. And again, thank you so very, very much. And we're so glad we get to see this spotlight into rural Benton County services. You are a lifesaver in this space for so many families. Thank you.
You're gonna make me cry. Thank you.
I know, Catherine, it made me cry too. Oh, what kind words. Alice, did you want to ask a question or provide any support or insight?
Denise, I have a friend, Jean Marie Buxton, who's been growing food for the tribes, and I wondered if she's connected with you because she does an enormous amount of trucking. And I was just thinking it would be helpful if she coordinated with you, since you're now coordinated with the tribes also. She moved here from Georgia. She's only been here about 4 years, but she has a huge farm and big heart. So I'd like to get her to know you. I'm going to see if that can happen.
Thank you. Awesome.
Alice, I can email you and Janice to connect you to make sure you can get in touch.
That'd be great. Thanks.
I want to make sure folks see in the chat, Anna from Jackson Street saying, amazing. Thank you, Janice. And Anita Earl, your heart is tremendous. I'm so proud you are a part of our community. Thanks, Anita. Are there other questions or insights from the board you'd like to share?
I had a question.
Go for it, Carol.
Do you have a connection then with the Oregon Food Bank and with the Lynn Benton Food Bank?
Yes, Lynn Benton Food Share is our regional food distribution area. We get orders from them every week. And of course, Oregon Food Bank is the overarching for the state, and then the USDA TFAT program is the federal program.
So when the reason I'm asking, I had two questions. One of them is, the reason I'm asking is that if Food Bank happens to be my major charity, I try to support them. I don't think I've seen on the website, I think that's under CLCC, I don't see a reference to your food bank. I see a reference to South Corvallis Food Bank and to, so I'm not saying it's not there, but you might want to double check that, because I try to spread that around when I do it. And then in terms of funding, I wonder, and this is sort of one of those dumb questions people raise, which I give myself permission to do, and that's you know, we hear a lot about what's her name, Mackenzie Scott, and the you know, Jeff Beeble's former wife, and she gives a lot of money to her foundation gives a lot of small grants to various really local places, and it almost seems like, I mean, it's kind of a far out harebrained idea, but it almost seems like it would be worth trying to see how to do that, because she doesn't have a lot of red tape. You just you know, everything I've read about her, she's very interested in this kind of work, and I don't know if you've tried that, but I don't see why not, you know, and same way with Allison. I mean, this is a kind of thing that, and she's known for not asking for a lot of paperwork, which is prohibitive to, say, a group like yours where you're barely getting through. So I would even be happy, because I'm a librarian at heart as well as profession, to do some checking and see if I can find a contact and send it to you, because I know that's a real pain in the, you know, what to do that. And then I guess I'm not typically one who likes to heap on praise, but I really appreciate the work you're doing. I think you're absolutely correct that Monroe has a great library. That's a John Gray's library from OCF, and but you know, it does get neglected, and it's nice to know. And they've had some OCF grants down there. I think the woman who does the artwork, I did that grant, and it's way cool. The stuff you're doing is really, really nice. And I'm kind of keen on getting things in the newspaper. And this seems like a great story for the GT. Same way with the drop-in center, the sort team. I kept trying to get Maddie to do a column, but they're kind of interested in expanding their local coverage. And so if you reached out to the editor or to Cody Mann, I'm sure you'd get some traction there, and maybe traction means money.
Yes, thank you for the great ideas. I didn't know that.
Carol, would it be okay if, oh, sorry, Allison,
Sorry,
just one quick
no,
question.
I was just gonna say, this is Allison speaking. You're the third person, Carol, who said, go for that Bezos money.
Yeah.
And when three people say to do things, you have to do them. So yes.
Well, I'll do a social investigation.
Please, I would love that.
Give you the data.
Carol, are you okay with me connecting you with Janice via email so you can continue to share info?
Well, yeah, otherwise how could I do it?
Okay, just making sure. I don't want to give out your private digits without asking.
Google me and you'll find it. Thanks.
Janice, did you want to respond to any of that? Or are you ready for more questions?
I'm just appreciative. These are ideas. This is what this is all about. I haven't thought about some of these things at all, so, or even known about them. So great. I'm happy for this information. Thank you.
Other questions or insights or ideas from our Hope Board members? There's quite a few of you here who haven't talked yet today. Do any of you have thoughts or questions about this? Charles.
Just a thought. I just want to say thank you. Just amazing work, and it's great to hear from the rural part of Benton County. So much focuses on Corvallis and our needs, but the needs are everywhere, and the work you're doing is instrumental. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts from folks? I see quite a few of our board members here who haven't chimed in yet today. Any thoughts or ideas or questions? Okay, well, Janice, if you're all right with it, I will share your South Benton Food Pantry email with the Hope Board. And if they think of ideas or thoughts or, wanting to contribute or make connections, they can connect with you directly. Does that sound good?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Of course. And now that you've heard about both of these different expanding resource centers, does anybody have questions for Allison and Janice about sort of the bigger picture or any connections between the two? Jan, did you have a question? I saw you unmute.
No, I was just wanting to, I did have a question, but I just wanted to say how touched I am with the that Monroe Resource Center and how all the work you've done. Thank you.
Did you have a question, Jan?
No.
Okay.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Well, Janice or Allison, do you have any follow-up questions for the board? Has anything else come to mind?
For me, I was just wondering if I am for the vision that we have. Do we have what you want in meeting the goals of the Hope Board and other things? Is there any way that I can improve on anything?
I think you're already hitting it out of the park. Sorry,
Yeah,
George, go for it.
I'll take a shot at that. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. That's the best thing you can do is keep doing it the way you're doing it with the love and enthusiasm that you're bringing to it. And that will just continue to draw resources toward you. I mean, it's the work about building communities. What you're doing is building resilient people and resilient families and resilient communities. And that's what Allison is doing too. And so it's hard work and it's long work, but it's not hopeless work. It's work with a lot of hope. So yeah, keep doing it, and it's things will keep going your way.
Thank you, George. Bria, do you have a question or idea?
It was just more of a thank you because I wish we had these kind of resources in Maryland. Just I wish that was the case because I would honestly that would made a whole lot of difference, especially for me. And I know a lot of people who are still suffering out on the streets over there, and just not. We're gonna have a cry party. Oh my God, I think it's just like amazing what you guys are doing, and keep it up.
Bria, is for Janice's question wanted that would have helped you that Janice didn't mention? That question's for you, Bria. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. Go for it.
No, you're fine. It's just having those because especially in certain places that I did live, we also didn't have fresh ingredients for anything. We had food banks, but they were just everything was canned. As if you don't have a place, don't have a can opener, how are you going to open it? Just so it's just like everything that you guys are doing, and it's like being able to have those resources so readily available. That awesome.
Thank you, Bria. Nancy.
Hi, yes, I hope you guys can hear me. Janice.
Yes, we can hear you fine, but we can't see you.
Okay. Just wanted to also pass along my thanks to Janice and my encouragement. Good job. I really appreciated what you said at the beginning about Monroe being part of Benton County and acknowledging that there is need. That is something that I unfortunately hear from time to time is people say that the smaller communities just don't have, these needs or the issues, that those are a Corvallis issue. And we all know that that is not correct. So thank you for acknowledging that and then going above and beyond to do something about it.
Thank you, Nancy. Well, Allison, it looked like you had a question too. I'm not seeing any other board members raise their hand. Did you want to ask the board something? And you're muted, Allison. There you go.
Yeah, thanks. No, I guess wanted to like underscore a few things that have come up in the course of the conversation. And one was that Janice mentioned how all of this is completely impossible without volunteers who are like the most incredible people. And I put this in the chat, but some people don't have access to the chat. And I am stunned day to day by the folks who show up, keep showing up inside all of the incredible chaos that is working at a place like a resource center. And so just can't say enough good things about the people who are in our communities who are not getting paid. They're just they're just there because they understand what it means to support other humans. And at the drop-in center, that looks like a lot of hours. So that was more of just a thank you to those folks. I also was thinking about two other things. One, Janice, when you were talking about folks wanting language classes and other things that are just like, per George's comment, like legit community building. I mean, it's so important to have those things. I mean, sure, the services are also important, but that just sense of like purposefulness and being in spaces together and making beautiful things, even if we had a pumpkin carving yesterday, like just really simple things, and I think George is right that it's all kinds of things that make the supports. It's not just needs navigation, right? It's like, hey, here's a pumpkin and a carving tool and a cup of coffee, and like 3 hours later, hey. And things that you made me think, Janice, about when we've had community conversations with guests about like, what would you want? I mean, people start with like a music group, right? Or like there are all these things that are part of a quote center. And so anyway, just wanted to underscore that, like I said. And then the third piece, not to dwell on things that are heavier, but Janice also mentioned like working with county harm reduction, and so much of the work is about that too, like meeting people exactly where they are, and the kinds of need that that folks have is it's pretty unbelievable some days. And to have support from the Hope Board, knowing that it's real support, not in the sense of like I said before, like there will be pretty shining buildings and we'll be able to show data that says, hey, look at all these people who are doing better. It's like, no, like you are doing a massive mental health lift. You, as Janice and I were talking about, you drive out to someone's RV and help them with clean needles. Like that's all part of the gig. And I just appreciate the realness around that and wanted to acknowledge that in this group, and also be clear that that is a huge part of what the day-to-day looks like too. People have a lot of complicated things happening, and we need to be there for all of that. Okay, that was it.
Thank you, Allison. Go for it, Janice, of course.
So I just wanted to piggyback off of that need a little bit, because, and I want to, might be a little hard to hear this, but being out here and being able to hear the intense need in our area, getting the help that we need is sometimes above and beyond what I'm capable of doing. But I'm not trying to say this out of any kind of anything, but when COVID hit and we're here and Benton County was trying to figure out everything, I felt very alone in trying to provide the things that were necessary. I had families that needed propane just to simply heat or cook with, and couldn't get anybody to recognize that until I was able to work with some people finally that heard me to get propane. So we went and filled, I think we filled 30 propane jugs one day. And and what came out of that is I couldn't get a local propane like Co-Energy or anything like that to do that because they're all shut down. And some of them wouldn't help because the propane tanks were old. So, this is one thing that was there. The other part of it is in this aloneness and in this struggle to meet the needs of people that are in real harm right now. Even I serve a family, a set of families that live on a property together, and for all intents and purposes, they are homeless. They're living in a camper or a tent with no electricity, no running water, no sanitation. But to go out and give them food, and the food box, is treacherous, but we do it. And I cannot get any Benton County person to listen for this group of families, that they need help, they need sanitation, they, without saying, oh, well, it needs to be shut down, they need to be moved, we have to help them where they're at right now. Let's get some help out there. They have mental health needs, they have health needs. It isn't just about food, and it's just so basic. There's no transportation. I mean, this is just one property. I could give you a story of all kinds of other properties around here where this help is needed. One of the other things I'd like to do out here is to have a space available for a camper or a trailer, and that's, down the line, but, for somebody to have a safe place to be. When I did that during COVID, I got booted by, the family that I was helping got booted by the city because our city ordinance does not allow for that. So, that's another area that I need to work on, but I don't know where to start with that. I had this family move their bus from in front of the church. They moved it one day so that they could come back and spend another 3 days here. It was just, to me, asinine, but sorry for the language, but those are the kinds of things that I struggle with in trying to get the help that I need to give people that need help. I worked on another front. I worked with Medical Teams International to do the dental van, and we, for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years, in one particular instance, this one young man needed all of his teeth pulled, and he has hit every dental van. And the last dental van, this is just, it just broke my heart. He brought his false teeth in his pocket when he got his last few teeth put out. He said, yay, I can put in my new smile. And he did. And he said, thank you for bringing the dental van here. And I said, I'm so glad, but he has a beautiful smile, and he just will shout it to the world where it came from. And just, without collaborative efforts, you don't know whose lives you're touching. So just a couple other things. Thanks.
I guess, Julie and the rest of you all, I mean, it feels like there's a pretty tight group in Corvallis that works together, but when I'm hearing this, my heart goes out to you. And how do we make that connection so that the kind of work, because some of the stuff you're struggling with, people here are struggling with and have come up with answers. How do you get how do you look at changing ordinances? How do you get, some of this stuff? That information is here. And so how do we as a board help provide the conduit so that this information is going out? Because I think that's wasted when you don't share what you have. And certainly Sean's done a lot of work, and Allison's done a lot of work, and the Hope Board's done a lot of work. And a lot of this, people, George could run back and forth. But I mean, we know stuff, and it's clearly not being shared, and it feels like we're sort of a closed circle, which I never thought about till I heard this presentation that we are Corvallis focused. And even when we talk about Benton County, we're kind of talking about, Philomath and Elsie. We're not talking about South Benton County. So I think we're negligent. Not intentionally but inadvertently negligent. And I think this is an opportunity to develop some networks that spread out. And,
Thank you for that, Carol. We took the first step in that meeting in Monroe with Janice and a bunch of community partners to say, what are the needs? How do we communicate? How do we do some referral pathways? And it is something that I know myself and my colleagues working on implementation of the H.O.P.E recommendations. We want to coordinate on this effort more, and we're trying to. So Janice got to meet our new project manager just last month. So we are trying to improve that, Carol, but there is more that needs to happen. So I've got some ideas of who to connect you with, Janice, that I've jotted down. And I want to make sure that you see in the chat that Anita Earl would like to partner with you to some of the determinants of health. So I'm going to connect you right after this call with Anita.
Thank you.
Does that sound okay, Anita?
That sounds like just what I want.
Wonderful.
You're going to be inundated with
sorry.
information. You're going to regret you ever talked to us.
You're going to have like 10 emails in your inbox from me. George, sorry, Catherine put her hand up first. So Catherine and then George.
Oh,
Catherine, are you at a place where you
can?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
trying.
There you go.
So I just want to toss out a reminder of some things we talked about some rural mobility from our hubs in Corvallis and kind of that Benton County resourcing. How do we transport that in some sort of a rural format, or excuse me, in some sort of a mobile format to our rural regions, which might be able to address some of these needs. I do know that Lane County, a little over about a year and a half ago, I guess I would say, they instituted a mobile, it was geared kind of around food, but it was also going to bring other resources into their very rural areas of Lane County, which are very remote. And so that's a model that might serve as, should we decide to explore such a way to bring resources into Monroe on a cyclical basis, once a month or once a week, we have a band come into that region. That might be a solution to revisit as we move forward with either recommendations or Benton County and City of Corvallis in these discussions.
Catherine, when I email out Janice's email to the whole H.O.P.E board, can you send that idea from Lane County to Janice so that she has some terminology to work with about what to ask for?
I will sure do my best. I can see if I can go back, because I interviewed with those folks about that program because it was very exciting and kind of cutting edge. So I'll see what I can come up on that, but always happy to talk with Janice. So yes, I'll follow up.
Thank you. Anything else you wanted to add, Janice, before we go to George's question?
I just appreciate it. Thank you very much.
George, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what people have been saying, and Julie and Catherine, you both said a little bit of this. That Janice, your question was, how do you get more help down there? Well, this being here is part of the way to do that. And there are a number of elected officials in this meeting, and there are a number of public officials in this meeting that are employed in local governments. And so part of what needs to happen is get you connected in to the resources that they know. How do you change an ordinance? Well, there are city councilors in Monroe, but there are people in this room that know the city councilors down there and that have interactions with them and can help make introductions and get you connected in those ways. The other thing that I think is really important to remember, at least for me, is, and what I hear you talk is, your plate is as full as it needs to be right now, just doing what you're doing. What you need are more people. And one of the things that people in this group can do, there are a number of organizations that provide volunteers with a small stipend to be able to come down there. And if you had somebody that could come down there, 8-10 hours a week, even that, or half time, whatever you could find out through some type of a paid internship program or a volunteer. There's a number of different volunteer programs that these folks know way more about than I do. but getting you another body down there so you keep doing with the people, doing the work with the people. Then you have somebody to investigate the networks and help educate you on how to interact with them, and for you to interact together. I think that can help you go a long way. So there's people in this room that can help you. Peggy's probably the best person to deal with the volunteer folks, but the paid internships. But you've already started to make those connections just by being here.
The other person I would say is the OSU Extension folks,
Yeah.
because OSU has certain programs for students who qualify where they can pay them for internship hours. So ask our OSU Extension folks, Diana and others, about that idea that George shared. And Peggy did want me to share, she couldn't be here tonight, but for Allison and Janice, and so everybody else knows too, that if either or both of you would like to attend one of her management team meetings and talk them and get feedback, ask questions, and talk about all that you're talking about here, that invitation is there.
And I don't know, if, Janice, if you're connected to the Rural Organizing Project as well. That would be another resource, rural organizing. Charles, what's it called? Rural Organizing Project. And they're across Oregon doing a number of things directly related to what you're talking about, and have a number of resources. And I also think about the Ford Family Foundation and their small community initiative to put money into small communities for this kind of thing and for community building activities, which is what you're doing. So you just need some little more help.
I think it'd be helpful to. I've got that Ford Foundation, Family Foundation. I'll give you that, but I have a sense that what we need to do is actually provide her with the data rather than just throwing out do this, because that's the hard part. I mean, she's just trying to get her work done, and so I'll look up Ford, I'll look up Melinda French, and I'll look up McKinsey. And find out what I can find out, so you don't have to do that. So if somebody wants to do that other one, George, that you mentioned, rural communities, your job is to get all the data and send it to her so she didn't have to spend her time doing it.
Alita.
We also have a grant writer who is
Exactly.
now contracted for H.O.P.E implementation. Would connect you with Libby, our contracted grant writer, to see if any of her research or within her role and how she can support different organizations might align with what you're looking for. Oh yeah, and then Allison, please have Alita connect on the Rural Organizing Project or whoever it is, because I know that Alita just hosted that.
I got numbers on my phone, so that would be. I should have thought of that before, actually. And plug for Libby Winter, who is working with Julie's team too, who's a grant writer. She's a baddie, so it'll be great to have her in the mix too.
Other questions or comments for Janice or Allison? Janice and Allison, do you have anything else you wanted to ask the board? You're going to get a lot via email, Janice, so hopefully support will come with it as well.
Well, hopefully it's the cavalry coming and not the train coming down the track.
I so appreciate all of this. Thank you very much. And yes, I am just one person. I am a paid staff person, but I only get paid for 25 hours, and I swear I do twice that much work. So, but thank you. I really appreciate all the input, and just good job on everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. And there are some folks attending here who are not H.O.P.E board members who might have ideas or ability to support you. If you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, if you would like any ideas or support from community members attending today, that might be helpful. And Allison, you wanted to go.
I just wanted to say thanks again. This was a lot of hours spent talking with both of us, so I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and you're willing to be here to do this. And also just to remind people that it's a drop-in center, like drop in. Anyone's welcome. You can come by. Sometimes I'll say to people like, oh, they're like, I can just like, I'm like, drop in. Yeah, actually you can. So feel free to come down and see what we're doing and kind of some of the constraints materially and otherwise that we're working with. You can meet our incredible volunteers and staff, and just a reminder that you're more than welcome on 4th Street whenever you want.
Allison, would you put the hours that the CDDC is open to the general folk to drop in and not just people who are meeting there with appointments? Allison and Janice, please stay on for just a minute. We have only like 5 minutes worth of updates, but before we do that, I would love to introduce your newest Hope Board member, Alice Carter. And Alice, how's your audio doing now?
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Please
All right.
introduce yourself because you might have some great ideas for these
I'm so
fantastic
happy
people.
to meet the people that I follow in my furtive ways. Certainly, I showed up at the drop-in center many times with lots of clothes because that's my thing of collecting stuff. But I moved here 4 years ago and I immediately got involved with Housing Action and then went to a provider meeting and found out that there was a little hole where respite care was not being provided in the degree that it was needed. So I went to my church and to our priest, Father Stephen Soot, who always says yes to everything I ask him. And I said, let's do hospice care, not hospice care, excuse me, respite care. And he said, yes, let's do it. So we formed a board and we are now in the process of getting our 501c3. And we are not going to be providing medical care level, but we will be providing comfort care level. And I'm looking forward to working with people in Hope and in the community because I can see that things get done when we get together. They don't get done when we're all by ourselves. But my background has been for the past, let's see, I'm 93 and I started when I was 27. So I've been involved with providing transitional care for single moms in Boston. And I've worked with addiction for 10 years, living in with my addicts. So we were neighbors in more than one way. And food pantry in Boston and the Fenway. And so I have a variety of experience in my 93 years, but the best place to work is Corvallis. This is the community that I feel has a really big heart. And it also had 3 independent bookstores, which was another reason why I moved here. But that's me. I have 6 kids, one of whom actually lives here in Corvallis, and 2 grandkids are here. So that's all I can tell you about me right now. It's late here on the East Coast.
Thank you for being here, Alice, even though you are still back in Boston and will be in Corvallis soon. Like Alice said, she brings a generational perspective and institutional knowledge and a lifetime of experience that we don't have on the board. And St. Olga's is going to be pursuing this respite possibility that is sort of one step down from the medical respite that Samaritan does. So it wouldn't be people being discharged from the hospital, but there's still people who are out there living unhoused and they need a place to heal, and they're not, ER level. And so St. Olga's really wants to fill that gap. And so in the future, Alice will probably come back for a Hope Board meeting the same way Janice and Allison have to talk about here's our plans, please give us ideas, how can we collaborate or support. So I'm so thrilled you're here, Alice.
Thank you all for listening. It's been a great honor to be with you, especially appreciated the speakers. And you're both working on things dear to my heart. So that's awesome.
Oh, meeting, we have just like 2 slides of updates that I want to make sure you all get to see. Alice, I'm going to go ahead and mute you so I don't get any feedback. And we should be able to end right on time. Oh, nope, wrong one. Apologies. Okay, here we are. Okay, so just a quick progress update on what the city and county staff are working on this fall that relates to implementation of the HOPE recommendations. Your first recommendation on data improvement, we are really going to put some time and effort and energy into not just data, but really how data helps us prioritize our most vulnerable neighbors for housing opportunities by working towards a coordinated entry system and process. So we're going to be doing that a lot, and thanks to many of our provider partners partners like Allison and other folks who are going to be involved to shape this process. And then communications, there will be a community progress update similar to the one that went out in June, but we're going to have a new one in fall because there's been even more progress over the summer and the fall. So that will be coming out sometime this fall. And then myself and our Becca Taylor are also doing rural outreach and engagement with city managers in Benton County and also provider partners. So we started in Monroe with Janice and Amigos de Monroe and OSU Extension to really hear that feedback about the communication needs and the rural perspectives as we embark on a pilot to coordinate our efforts more in Benton County when it comes to homelessness solutions. And then the social services task force update. Jan, we don't have time to give an update, so I'm going to ask that people sign up for information on the task force and they can learn more about that process. There was an update about it last month. And if folks are interested, they can email Jan directly. Does that sound okay, Jan?
Yeah, I do. I do have a 2-page update, and I can just send that back to everybody who wants it.
Thank you. If you can send it to me and I'll shoot it out to the whole Hope board.
Will do.
Thanks, Jan. And then just your upcoming meetings, a reminder that November and December are different. Your November meeting will be on the second Wednesday of the month, the 9th. And the justice system improvement folks are going to be here in a similar way that Allison and Janice were here. It's not just going to be educational, but they really would like to engage the Hope board and ask for your feedback on certain questions on this topic. And then in December, your meeting will be December 14th. And in the meantime, our team is going to keep working on our pilot to coordinate our efforts to respond to homelessness solutions and improving our data. It was a very we will end on time tonight. Any last minute thoughts from our co-chairs, Bria or George?
Everything sounded good to me.
Yeah, thank you all for attending and participating today. What we do is important.
Is coordinating entry the same as the navigator?
No, coordinated entry is that presentation that Peggy helped give about how we have data and assessments, and it prioritizes folks based on vulnerability and referrals happen in a coordinated way. Okay. I can send you the link to the presentation that they did. That might have been one of the meetings you missed, Carol.
No, actually, I read it. I was just thinking about the navigator is the idea that you have a single entry point versus a coordinator.
The navigation center. I thought you meant health navigator.
No,
yes,
no, I'm
Allison's
sorry. I meant
navigation.
what Allison was talking about.
Yeah, Allison, do you want to just answer that real quick?
I was just gonna say, Carol, we can absolutely talk about that. I think a navigation center can help to centralize some people's access to the coordinated entry system.
Yeah.
And we use coordinated entry. We're part of that at the drop-in center. But that's I think a bigger conversation, and I'm happy to chat with you about sort of the ways that we use it, what that looks like in street outreach.
Okay.
And right now, Community Service Consortium holding that as their sort
of. I'll
the,
connect up with you then.
That sounds
I might
awesome.
even drop in, and you can help me, get my driver's license straightened out or something.
That sounds perfect.
Cool.
I'll be there.
But short answer is yes, a navigation center would help support and further the efforts to implement a coordinated entry system in a variety of ways.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, thanks.
Allison and Janice, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom and your work, your blood, sweat, and tears that you have put into helping people and continuing to expand and progress. And Alice, welcome to the Hope Board. I'm so thrilled you'll be here. I know everybody else is. And I will follow up with a slew of emails to make sure everyone gets connected in the ways that they want to. And we'll go ahead and end your meeting at 6 o'clock tonight. Thanks, Hope Board, and all the guests.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.